Welcome to the Wealthy Woman's Podcast, a podcast for high-achieving women who are great at making money but struggle to build wealth. You'll learn how to take control of your money, increase your net worth, and make more. Ladies, it's time to create a life with more money and more freedom. Let's dive in. Well, hello there. Welcome to today's podcast episode. I am super excited about this topic because this is something that I struggled with for a very long time. And if I'm not careful, I can always slip back into this. So this is something that I think is going to be really helpful for a lot of you. So this episode and the next episode, we're going to talk about overspending. Yes, we're going to talk about overspending. And for today, we're going to look at three things in particular. We're going to look at what drives us to overspend, the types of overspending we can indulge in, and then why we do each of these types. And I'm going to give you some examples as well so that you can potentially see yourself in these examples and really understand where we're going and that this can totally be changed for you if you want it to. So many of my clients come to me and they're like, Jermaine, I'm just bad with money. I have no discipline. I have no self-control. I just spend. I don't pay attention. I'm just bad with money. And I always have to stop them and say, guess what? That is not true. You are not bad with money. I bet you we can find instances in your life where you're actually pretty good with money. And then I even go as far as to say, and you're not undisciplined, because guess what? I'm sure we can find areas in your life where you're very disciplined. For instance, do you brush your teeth every day? Do you shower? Like all the little things. If you have kids, do you make sure they eat? So we do have discipline. We do have self-control. And there are areas of our money where we're really good, right? So we have to stop telling ourselves these lies, right? They're just thoughts that are not true, and we just have to let them go. And so today I'm really going to break down the truth around why you overspend. It has nothing to do with your discipline. It has nothing to do with your self-control. And it doesn't mean that you're bad with money if you overspend. The reason why you overspend is because you're a human and you have a human brain. And that human brain is wired to feel good all the time, right? Our brains are wired to survive. And the way that we survived all of these years is by doing what felt good. If we did something that felt painful, it meant danger. And it meant that if you keep doing that thing, you might die. So think back to the cave days, right? When our people that lived in caves, they really had to be very careful. There was a lot of danger all around them. And a lot of times those dangerous scenarios were painful. They felt bad. And so that's how our brains are wired. It's like, okay, if you feel bad, then that means you need to fix it. And you need to be very vigilant about any pain you may be feeling. Because if you're feeling pain, it's dangerous and it could cause you to suffer consequences and potentially die. Okay. And so if you forward back to today, our brains are still wired that way. It does not want to feel any pain. It doesn't want to feel any negative emotions. And so whenever our brains are feeling negative emotion, it's like, okay, what can we do to fix it? And for me, and maybe you, we do it by shopping. We do it by spending money. We do it by indulging in retail therapy. Other people may do it by eating. Have you ever heard of emotional eating, right? Some people may do it by just being on social media or gambling. There's so many ways that we can make ourselves feel better when we're not feeling very good, right? If we're sad, if we're bored, if we're frustrated, if we're stressed out, there's so many ways. Some people turn to alcohol. There's just so many different things we can turn to. And for us, we turn to shopping, right? And so I want you to know that shopping and spending is not a problem, not whatsoever, unless you're doing it against your will, unless you're doing it to make yourself feel better and you're overspending and you're spending way more than you want to, and it's preventing you from reaching the financial goals you have for yourself. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So it's actually called the motivational triad. Remember I said our brains are wired to survive. And the way we do that is by avoiding pain, seeking pleasure, and then conserving energy. So let's talk about avoiding pain. I kind of already alluded to it, but one way in modern times we avoid pain is by escaping negative emotion. So when we're stressed, we're bored, we're frustrated, and that doesn't feel good to us. Our brain is like, hey, we're not feeling good right now. We're not feeling happy. So we got to go do something to make us feel better. And for us, it's shopping, it's overspending, it's impulse spending, right? It's emotional spending. We're going to talk about those three in a minute. Okay. So that's the way we avoid pain. We also seek pleasure. So those two kind of go hand in hand, right? So it's just like, I'm feeling this pain. Let me go do something that's going to make me feel better. Or I know I can go to Target. I can just go see what's at Nordstrom. I'm just going to go window shop, or I'm going to just open my apps and scroll, right? And then we end up overspending and then creating that negative consequence for ourselves. And the other thing our brain likes to do is to conserve energy or do what's familiar. It doesn't want to do anything that it has to learn. It just wants to do the things that are already habitually there. So if you've created a habit of, you know what, every time I get paid, I go shopping. Every time I get paid, or every time I'm bored, or every time there's this new event, I go shopping, then your brain is like, okay, that's what we do. Let's just continue to do that. And if you ever want to break free from that, the brain revolts, because that means it has to learn a new thing, and it doesn't want to learn a new thing. It just wants to conserve energy. If you think about when we were back in the cave, that was important. You had to conserve your energy because you needed to run if a saber-toothed tiger was chasing you, right? And so our brains today still thinks it needs to conserve energy. So it only really wants to do the things that it already knows how to do, the things that are familiar. And so if you have that familiar pattern of spending money, of shopping all the time, and just, overspending, then the brain wants to keep doing it, even though it really isn't good for you. There is this higher part of your brain. So the motivational triad is what I call the primitive brain, right? That's the brain that just wants to survive and it wants to just feel good all the time. There is this higher self, this higher part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. And that part of your brain wants to thrive, right? It doesn't just merely want to survive, it wants to thrive. And so that's why you are listening to this podcast. That may be why you would join the Wealthy Woman's Academy, because it's like, I want to do something that's going to get me closer to my goals. I want to live an abundant life. I want to live a life that's different than what I've been creating. And these two parts of you, the primitive brain and the prefrontal cortex, are sometimes at odds with each other, because one just wants to feel good all the time and the other one wants to grow and build wealth and create this amazing life. And so I just want to give you a little bit of context behind that. You're going to hear me talk about that throughout this podcast, because it is the reason why we do what we do. But now that you know about the motivational triad, and now that you know that it's at odds with what you really want, and your primitive brain and your prefrontal cortex are these two parts of you that's part of your brain, and they're at odds with each other, now you can stop telling yourself that you're bad with money. You can stop telling yourself that you just don't have any discipline. And you can stop telling yourself that you don't have self-control. You can now say, oh, I just have programmed my brain to spend money. It feels good when I spend money. I just have to figure out how to reprogram my brain. And that is what we're going to do in these podcast episodes that are coming up. And if you join the Wealthy Woman's Academy, this is what we work on all the time. Reprogramming your brain so that you can actually start building wealth, so that you can actually start managing and growing your money, and so that you can be that wealthy woman and live that wealthier life that you so desire. Okay, so that is why we overspend. It's because we are humans with human brains, and that human brain wants to feel good all the time. It wants to avoid pain, and it wants to do the familiar things we've always done before. But just also know that there's this other part of you that wants more. And that's the part that you want to tap into more often. And we'll talk about that in future episodes. Okay. So now let's talk about the different types of overspending. So number one is just to overspend. And that just means to spend more than you want to or planned to spend, right? So this is just when you are like, okay, I want to spend this amount, but then you end up spending a different amount, an amount that's more than you wanted to spend. Then there is impulse spending. This is when you buy something that you were not planning to buy, right? And just because you impulse spend doesn't necessarily mean you overspend, but impulse spending can definitely lead to overspending, right? And I'm going to go into some examples of these in a few minutes, but just know that impulse spending is when you buy something kind of like in the moment, you weren't planning to buy it, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're overspending. It just means that you're buying something that you really weren't planning to buy. And then the final one is emotional spending, and that is when you spend to cope with heightened emotions like boredom, stress, frustration, even excitement, or things like guilt or jealousy. All of those can really drive you to emotional spend. Sometimes when you're really excited, you might want to spend, and sometimes when you're really down, that's how you pick yourself back up, is by going to overspend or to indulge in so-called retail therapy. Okay, so now you know the three. I'll say them again: overspending, impulse spending, and emotional spending. And you can just reflect to yourself, like, which one do you think you indulge in more? Is it like overspending, where you just are kind of like not really following a plan, or you create a plan and you don't follow it and you overspend? Or is it just like, hey, I just impulse spend? Or is it an emotional thing for you, where you know I'm really spending because I'm emotionally not feeling my best? Okay, so let's go into some examples of why we do these things, why we overspend, why we impulse spend, and why we emotional spend. So I want you to understand that all of our actions, all of them, are driven by something we're thinking or something we're feeling. Actually, both. Your actions, your behaviors are driven by something you're thinking and something you're feeling. That is what drives you to act. So whenever you are doing something, right, it's not because you are just bad with money, or that you have no discipline, or that you have no self-control. It's because you're thinking and feeling something, right? You're thinking something, and those thoughts create a feeling inside your body, and then those feelings drive you to do something, to act upon something, to do something you do want to do or don't want to do. So here's an example of overspending. So a lot of times when we overspend, I think we can use an example of food, right? You may have decided that you want to spend $200 a week on food. That could be groceries, that could be eating out, right? And then maybe it's later in the week, maybe your week has been a little stressful, maybe you're running behind, you're like, I'm just going to go pick something up, even though you know if you go pick that thing up from the restaurant, that it's going to put you over because you've already spent, your money for the week, and you've got groceries in the refrigerator. You have plenty of food at home, right? Sometimes the thought like, I'll figure it out later, will drive you to just go ahead and overspend. Or the thought that, you know what, I have plenty of money. I have money. I'll take care of it later. Like, I'll think about this later. And that drives us to overspend in the moment. And then maybe a week later or a few days later, we look and we're like, oh, I shouldn't have spent that much. I shouldn't have done that. I overspent. So just innocent little thoughts like, I'll figure it out later, or I don't feel like cooking, or I know I'll be able to cover it. Like stuff like that. Those kinds of thoughts will drive you to just go ahead and overspend. And then when it comes to impulse spending, I know that many of us can relate to Instagram ads, Facebook ads. I mean, you're just minding your own business, scrolling to see what's up with your friends, and then boom, here's the cutest dress that you've ever seen pop up in your feed, and you're like, oh my God, that's so cute. So that thought right there, oh my God, that's so cute, will drive you to like impulse spend, or I better get it now or it's going to sell out. Little thoughts like that will cause you to impulse spend, right? Another way we can impulse spend is like, okay, we're going into Target because we need toothpaste and maybe shampoo. So we have two things that we need. But when we get there, what are we encountered with? We see the cutest dress on the mannequin and we just have to try it on, right? That's why if you really pay attention, when you go into Target, the toothpaste and shampoo and all that, that's not at the front of the store. You have to walk past a whole lot of other things to get to those things because they want you to see all the pretty things they have so that maybe they can entice you to impulse spend. Because we know we're not going in there. Most of the times we're not going in there for a new dress. We're going in there for the toothpaste and the shampoo. So just keep in mind, like, okay, how do you actually go into Target and not get enticed by all the pretty things? Right now, we're just trying to bring some awareness to what's going on. We're not trying to fix anything right now. We're just trying to bring some awareness to this is why we impulse spend. And then emotional spending can come like this. Like, I had a bad day, or maybe I had an argument with my significant other, or maybe the kids have just been really rambunctious. I just need to relax. And then while you're relaxing, maybe in your bed, you happen to pick up your phone. And then next thing you know, you're on the Zara app or the Amazon app or the Nordstrom app, and you've got all these things in your cart. And you're like, okay, what's happening here? And I even have clients that'll tell me, I know that sometimes at night when I'm just trying to, relax, I pick up my phone and I buy things and I forget that I buy them, and then they come in the mail. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, right? That's because we're emotional spending. And a lot of times this happens after work when the kids are in the bed and we're just kind of hanging out and relaxing and we're bored and we're trying to decompress from a stressful day and we just shop, right? So that's an emotional spending scenario. Okay, so where do you fit into those? Are you an overspender where you just kind of have a plan in your mind what you want to spend, but you just blow right past it without any thought and you just tell yourself you'll figure it out later? Or are you an impulse spender where it's just like if an ad pops up on your feed, or if you're at Target and you see something that's really cute that you just have to have it and you can't just walk past it without buying it? Or are you an emotional spender where it's just after a long day, or if you're feeling bored or stressed or even excited, right? That you just go and shop. Which one are you? Just self-reflect, because next episode, we're going to talk about how to actually stop overspending. So this episode is just for you to kind of get some awareness around what's happening so that you now know why you overspend, that it's not because you're bad with money. You now know the types of overspending, emotional, impulse, or just plain old overspending. And you also have some examples so that you can see yourself and maybe kind of start to reflect over the next week. Where do I fit in this, right? And listen, awareness is the beginning of it all. Once you become aware of where you are and how you behave and how you act and how you think, then you get to start to make different decisions and create different results for yourself. Okay? So that is what I have for you all today, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Hey, before you go, if you're ready to create a life with more money and more freedom, then you're invited to join the Wealthy Woman's Academy, my signature coaching program where you'll learn how to take control of your money and build wealth without sacrificing your lifestyle. To get started, head on over to JermaineFoley.com. That's Jermaine with a G, Foley.com. See you there.